I'm also going to share my screen. And you should be seeing a slide deck right now. So you should be seeing a presentation. Um, Good evening again, everyone. My name is Gretchen Flores, and I'm part of the planning staff that has been working on these community area plans. Thank you for being here today and spending some time with us. The goal of today's meeting is to provide some additional information on the community area planning process, but mainly it's to answer your questions. And so to that point, the format will be, I have a very short presentation, and that is just intended to make sure that everyone is of the same understanding in terms of the background and the content of the plans themselves, and then sort of next steps, and then we'll open it up for questions on the specific plan for South Middle. So you've joined the South Middle presentation. If you are not in the right place, you can let me know, and I will move you to the correct room. So, um, the reason for developing the community area planning process is that Charlotte has been continuously growing for decades and it's projected to continue to grow. In response to that projected growth, the city adopted the 2040 comprehensive plan back in 2021, and that basically sets the 20-year vision for how the city is supposed to grow and change in the next 20 years. That plan essentially calls for future growth to benefit as many people as possible and for it to be done in an equitable way. While the comp plan provides a broad vision for the community, there are other levels of guidance that are needed to make sure that the vision comes to life. So our planning framework includes sort of four tiers or four levels of planning. The first one, as I just mentioned, is the comprehensive plan, and that provides the overall framework for policy for the city. Level two are what are known as strategic plans, and they are citywide documents that provide more detail than the comprehensive plan on a specific topic. So, for example, the SMP or the Strategic Mobility Plan provides more guidance on how to realize Goal 5, which is to create safe and equitable mobility choices, and that's Goal 5 from the comprehensive plan. Level three are the community area plans, and that's the sort of the phase that we're in now. And these are intended to provide more guidance for the appropriate land uses, building forms, and infrastructure needed throughout the plan geography. Level four drills down even further, and these are specific plans, and what they focus on is smaller geographies or smaller areas and provide more guidance for implementation of specific projects. So think of the corridors and playbooks. That's a really good example of specific plans. It's important to note that levels 2 through 4 all build upon the vision that is outlined in the comprehensive plan, and that was vetted through the community by extensive community input back in 2021. In terms of the land use component of the comprehensive plan, the 2040 policy map was adopted in 2022. And what that really lays out is, as I mentioned, the land use component of the comprehensive plan. So it's place-based policies mapped out in map form, and that really gives us where growth should happen and how in terms of land uses. It also does provide guidance on, again, building form, open space, and things of that nature. Oop, sorry about that. So essentially, community area plans are about creating complete communities, which means that they integrate housing, jobs, daily goods and services, and they try to mitigate environmental impacts. So essentially, this would be impacting where you live, work, and play in your community. Um, The important thing about this slide is that the community area planning process has been underway for about 2 years now. We are at the phase where we're going through review and adoption, and at the last public meeting that was held earlier this earlier last week, we heard from council and the community that there was additional desire to have some further engagement and opportunity to get questions answered, and that's why we're here before you tonight, just to provide you with an opportunity to get your questions answered. In terms of how the plans were developed, they were developed using a systematic process, and what that means is that all 14 geographies were developed developed in the same way, and have some common components and format within them. However, while that systematic approach was taken, there's specific information in the geographies that are very unique to the different geographic areas, and some of that includes the geography demographics, as well as some aspirational goals and elements in some of the mobility pieces. The plans are intended to provide a common set of consideration for all decision makers to ensure that we're consistently evaluating options throughout the city and aligning that with the city's vision. And over time, these considerations will help to ensure growth is accommodated in a way that respects and protects established neighborhoods, aligns with growth and infrastructure, aligns the growth with the infrastructure capacity, and there's a big focus on creating vibrant and mixed-use centers. So, in terms of what the content of the plans are, all of the plans have the following chapters, and I'll go into what the chapters contain, and then we can jump to specific questions that you might have. So, all of the plans have an intro chapter, and that just really sets the tone and gives the reasoning why the plans exist. The community area profile are really the demographics, so anything specific to that, to the geography. Community needs is really based off of the focus on increasing access to housing, access to jobs, and access to daily goods and services, as well as reducing environmental impacts. And what those four sort of categories are based on, the way that we get to how to determine those is by focusing on specific metrics that are identified in the comprehensive plan, that then help us prioritize some goals from the comprehensive plan. So, for example, if a specific area has a low score in housing, that means that it's in need of housing choices, both housing types, different housing types, housing affordability, and the different specific building types. And so that then helps us look at the goals that would help improve that goal in the geography, and tells us, okay, this is a priority goal for this area. There are 10 comprehensive plan goals, and all of them are important, but this is one way to prioritize some of those goals based on limited resources. Chapter 4, which is creating complete communities, really focuses on the recommended development pattern for the geography, and we can talk specifically about what that means from a mapping perspective as we get into that. It's important to know that a large portion of this geography is intended to remain the same, and around 13% of the geography is recommended to evolve into a different place type than what's on the ground today. Supporting the vision is the section of the plan that focuses on the centers and what that Go to the next slide. It contains a couple things. It contains some assessments for mobility, for open space, and for community character, as well as some additional policy guidance for all of those, for those three areas, as well as the environmental justice and the public facilities and services. One really useful component of the supporting the vision is the neighborhood toolkit, which is in the appendix of the document set. And that really gives you an idea of it gives you a list of all of the resources that exist with throughout the city for specifically for residents to be able to address their needs. So, for example, if there's a desire to find a resource to either empower a neighborhood who wants to take some action, for example, either create some amenitized programming for common open space or create a neighborhood park. There's some resources in there that can guide you through what the best course of action is and connect you to some contacts in the city. And then all plans have an implementation section and the appendix, which has all of these components. So access to housing, access to essential goods and services, the open space and environmental justice, the mobility assessment, community character, and neighborhood leadership. And then really after adoption, how can these plans be used? They can be used to influence or implement it through future development, private partnerships, capital improvements, and then the rezoning process. I will, next steps, last slide before we jump into questions. The next steps is Planning Committee has a meeting on May 20th, and you can catch that through the YouTube page. And that they'll make a referral to City Council on what their recommendation is. And then this is a very tentative date and has not been decided yet, but the June is when we are tentatively scheduling this for council decision. Again, that's not decided yet, and it's very tentative right now. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see the questions. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Let me see if there's anything in the chat right now. There is nothing in the chat right now. So we've got a small enough group where if there is a question, oh, I see one just came in. But we've got a small enough group where if there is a question, you don't want to type it in the chat, you can just unmute yourself. But we do have the first one from Thomas. Thomas says the land use type and roads as shown on the plan do not seem to reflect or accommodate the 50% population increase that we are forecasting the next 25 years. How are we planning to accommodate all of those people? It seems like we need to do a lot more high density housing around the neighborhood centers and the boulevards and avenues. This is especially true near the employment centers around town, proximity to Ballantyne, Westinghouse, and South Park. What am I not seeing or knowing? Where do people go? So that's an excellent question, Thomas. Thank you for asking. So the way that the projected growth has been accommodated in the map is not just to a specific geography. It has been um, uh, divided up within the city, and so the mapping component, the change that you see on the map for this area specifically, the expected growth is around 17,000 homes and around 12,000 jobs. And that's really a percentage of what's anticipated in the city. So that that's one of the explanations on why it might seem like it's not lower than what isn't not intended to accommodate the growth, but the mapping effort that we did back in 2022 and now revised through this process is intended to accommodate all of that growth. And you are absolutely correct that the centers is how we are basically addressing the growth. from the comprehensive plan, we got a lot of guidance to protect single family neighborhoods as much as possible. And so with that guidance and with knowing that the growth is coming, the responsible thing to do is to plan for the centers to really receive a lot of that growth. It's also where the infrastructure either exists or is best accommodated. And so, to your point, you're absolutely right that the centers is where that growth is sort of funneled to. Um, Thomas, did you have a follow-up on that?
If he doesn't have a question, I have a question. Um, two
Sure.
parts. Where can we see the videos for the previous sections? I joined late, so I'm not able to see my section. And two, is there a way for the public to still comment?
Yes.
And what's the website for that?
Yeah. So let me just jot down your question on the videos so that we can we typically make the videos available within a week or so. So we will it typically they typically live either on our YouTube page or on our website.
Sure,
But let me just make a note to myself.
sure.
So that I'm addressing that tonight when our team gets back together. I'll give you since you asked, I will give you the resource now, and
Yeah.
I will do this again at the end of the meeting. But all of our information is found on our website. Um,
Hmm.
this is This is our website. Now I'm dropping it in the chat just so that everyone can see it. And
Okay.
then the other way that you can comment, there's a number of ways to comment. You can either um, email us on our contact list.
Okay.
I'm sorry, email us at our trying to do two things at once. Email us at our at our email,
Sure.
or you can comment directly um, on the plan itself. So I will also drop the specific plan for South Middle in the chat.
So I'm not in South Middle. I'm in the
Okay.
north.
Do you know which one?
I don't know. This is confusing. I live at the intersection of Senator Royal and West Mallard Creek.
Okay, you might be North Middle and Outer, honestly. Um, I'm gonna drop if you go to our website, the 2040, the CLT Future 2040,
Hmm.
there is a link that'll take you to find your plan.
Hmm.
Um, and you can put in your address and it'll take you to your plan.
So if I
Probably,
use the 2040 link. Okay.
yes, if you use the 2040 link.
Okay. And this is not a question, it's more of a commentary.
Sure.
So I got invited to this thing, and
Mhm.
whatever platform you guys use was like less than intuitive. And I couldn't figure out how was it that I was going to join this thing.
Okay. So Eventbrite wasn't working for you.
Nope.
Okay.
Not this time
All right.
around.
Good to know. Thank you so much for that feedback.
Okay. Likewise.
Um, okay. Let's see. Doyle has a question. Doyle, I would like to ask about the process of implementation. Will it be adopted by City Council in June, and how does alignment rezoning work? So, to your first question is, will it be adopted in by council in June? That is still TBD. As I mentioned before, the next sort of meeting that's going to happen is Planning Committee on May 20th. And really from there, we will see what the recommendation is, and then when it would be taken to council. I will say that you will have ample notification of when they're supposed to be adopted, but the intent is that these get adopted at some point by council. Like that would be the process. Um, and then how does alignment rezoning work? Is that just a general question on how it works, or do you have a specific question?
Well, let me read to you something that was a response to an email from Dennis Grills to Allison Craig, who was asking specifically about implementation. I think that's the first thing I wanted to ask you about.
Mhm.
And here's her response. By the way, the policy matters.
Dennis, you're breaking up. You're kind of coming in and out.
Oh, okay. The policy map was adopted, approved March 28th, 2022.
Hmm.
So that's basically over 3 years ago.
Yes.
July 1st, it became effective. But at that time, um, there was there were proposed uh, sections on implementation, but had not yet been adopted. So it's been some time, a long time, that we've been asking about implementation. In fact, when the 2040 plan was first proposed, one of the comments I made was there was a section about implementation, and I asked about that and never got a response. So uh, I'm a little bit concerned. It has a practical impact
Hmm.
in the rezoning process, a very practical impact. And let me read you what Allison Craig wrote to Mr. Grills. Attached to the slide decks from the March 28 council meetings. This is 2022, where we discussed the policy map and the process for amending the policy map. The comprehensive plan and rezoning teams are refining specifics of the steps someone would take to change the policy map as described in the presentation that will be available in a couple of weeks. The rezoning process will continue as it is today, but with the policy map serving as the policy basis for rezoning decisions beginning July 1. Rezoning approvals for zoning districts not aligned with the adopted place types will result in an immediate change to the policy map. If there are corrections to the map that need to be made due to map errors, these changes can be made by staff. Not sure exactly whether that was responsive to that, but let me just say that that email was sent uh, uh, on June 7th of 2022. So basically 3 years ago.
Hmm.
And so it's disappointing to me, being someone who is active or was active previously in representing communities in rezoning issues, uh, where we would rely on the policy map as it existed at the time, only to find that when we went to a rezoning hearing, that the place type was apparently changed without regard to any discussion. It just simply was changed as a result of the rezoning process. So that is a very discouraging way to do planning, at least in my view. Um, we were led to believe when the 2040 plan was adopted that there would be a specific plan in place and there would be rules and procedures for changing place types in that policy map. But apparently that has not been done yet. Does this new plan that you're proposing do that?
There's guidance in the program guide that says when there is a rezoning petition that is not aligned with the policy map,
Mhm.
these are some of the criteria that we should be considering. We at the staff level to make a recommendation, and then council at their level to make a decision. And that really sets forth some really clear parameters around when it's appropriate to change a place type. And
Well,
so
I've read the
that,
criteria. I've read the criteria from time to time.
yes, yeah,
However, my problem is that has never been formally adopted by the city council.
that
It's
is,
entirely up to the planning department to make that decision.
mhm.
Is that
So
right?
with this process, it is part of the documents in the program guide, which is available on the website as well.
Mhm.
And it would be, should the plans be adopted, the program guide is also going to be adopted. So that would become adopted policy.
Okay, but I guess it goes to a very, very basic question I have, and that is the whole policy map. You talk about it as being uh, uh, I've forgotten the word. Let's see. The word is aspirational. I love that word. I'm a lawyer, so words have meaning for me. But
Mhm.
aspirational is a very vague word. My question is very simple. The policy map as adopted, Does it have any legal effect? Is it an ordinance? Does it count as an ordinance,
Mm.
or is it simply aspirational? And can it be changed um, simply by the rezoning process?
So it's not regulatory, right? So it's not part of like for the UDO, for example, it's not
Right,
part of
it's not
the
UDO.
UDO process. And as such, it is not the companion document to the UDO either. That would be the zoning map. And so the policy map um, is the companion document to the comprehensive plan. And that body of work is all policy based, it's guidance.
So it's
Um,
simply guidance. It can be changed ad hoc.
it cannot be changed by just by staff without it going through some process. If you read through the program guide, one
Mhm.
of the things that it spells out is how the policy map can be changed. And it does say that one of the options is through the minor map amendment, which would go through the rezoning process, basically. So when a rezoning is um, when there's a petition that comes in and the petition is not aligned with the policy map, um, should it be approved, it could change the policy map, essentially. And that is found on page 37 of the program guide. It starts with updating the policy map, which really starts the page before, so page 36. And it walks through this being one of the options on how to change the policy map.
Okay, so if I were a developer and I were submitting a rezoning request petition, and the policy map, let's say, described uh, the area where I wanted to build the project as like as basically as a neighborhood center,
Mhm.
but the clearly the scope of the development did not fit within the definition of neighborhood center. How would that work? No, I'm thinking of a specific project here.
Yeah. So we would consider whether or not it met the minor map amendment criteria for the place type changing to a neighborhood or whatever it was that the project had
Assume
to
it fit,
become.
assume the project would realistically fit within community activity center
Yeah.
or regional
So,
center.
so we would go to the minor map amendment criteria, look at the community activity center, and say whether or not the petition met that criteria. If it did, from a staff perspective, that's one of the things that staff is looking at to make a recommendation. It's not the only thing, right? Because the staff analysis has other things like comments from CDOT, comments from subdivision, et cetera.
Right.
Um, and so if it met the minor map amendment criteria, it would be one of the sort of items that rezoning staff then would look at to make a recommendation.
Uh, the specific project I'm thinking of is the Levine project, which is a very large project, an international drive off of Providence Road.
Hmm.
That um, when we had the public hearing a year or so ago, that area was listed as neighborhood center. I don't know what it is now. It can't be neighborhood center anymore. It has 2,000 residential units and 200,000 square feet of commercial space. So I don't know how it ends up getting changed. That to me that doesn't seem like a minor change. What about major changes? What is is it simply the scope of development that determines whether it's minor or major?
It's that, but also if you look at the guidance from the program guide, it talks about that it's the sort of scope and intensity, but also that it does not align with the comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
And uh, Doyle, I appreciate your very specific questions. If it's something that we need to schedule some time one-on-one, we can do that. I know Sarah and Juan have had their hands up, so I'd like to give an opportunity to them to be able
Absolutely.
to ask
No,
questions as well.
absolutely. It's a done deal, by the way. It was approved by City Council in the fall of last year,
Understood.
um, unfortunately. However, I would like to know whether this was a flawed process. So let's try to get together at some future time.
Sure. Thank you, Doyle.
Mhm.
Sarah, I know you've had your hand up for a while.
Sure. I just have a question about um, the level four in your slide, level four
Yep.
neighborhood area. And I wanted to know if can the evaluation at level four neighborhood areas cross two areas? For example, we have a long-standing single-family neighborhood that is split between South Inner and South Middle, and I'm just wondering, as a community, are we constantly going to have to be shuffling back and forth between, like, do double duty just to cover our community?
You
Or
mean you mean level four specific plans?
yes. Like, can they look at our actual neighborhood, which is 308 homes, but it's split in half by Archdale Drive? Is there a possibility for our neighborhoods to be evaluated at the neighborhood level, even if they
Yes.
cross South Inner and South Middle? Is the question.
Yes, yes. So if you look at some of the corridor playbooks, some of them do spill into like they cross over into different geographies, but those are just one specific plan for the extent of the corridor. So to your question, the answer is yes, it can be looked at as one. What is still needs to be developed are sort of the parameters around what would need to be like what criteria would need to be met for the specific plans to be underway, and then a process to do so. And that's still not, that's underdeveloped. That would have to be developed essentially. But good question. Thank you for asking it.
I have another question, but I know Juan may have been waiting. So if you want to go to him and come back, I think that'd be
Um,
better.
Juan, if you're okay, since Sarah is already unmute, maybe and we do have around 25 minutes. I think that should give us ample time. Sarah, go ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the types of housing
Hmm.
that um, have really started in earnest and last probably 5 years within our, general area. We've seen a lot of single family. It's not single family housing, but it's like three
So,
t- 3-story townhomes and that kind of things. And they're not really seeing developments that would allow for generational wealth to be built, because a lot of these new developments have really high homeowners associations that are paid and usually managed out of state, and they don't really have any accountability at the state level because of their geographies. And I'm just curious, um, are there plans to address housing for people with mobility challenges? So, like, as we have a lot of people in our neighborhood, they need to move into a smaller place as they age. And I think that's universal.
mhm.
And I'm not seeing housing stock that's being built within the community that would allow for a, a single level residence, whether that's communities that have apartments with an elevator or single family homes with I think they call that zero grade. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just not seeing that kind of development. I'd be interested to hear your response.
Yeah. So a couple things. From a broader perspective, the type of housing that you're probably alluding to that you're maybe not seeing, and it's not just in Charlotte, it's really throughout the country, and this is a big topic of conversation in the housing world, is really that missing middle. And what that really talks about is not just your apartments or not just your like detached single family on like 2 acres, but it's really the stuff in the middle that keeps housing affordable but also accessible. So yes, there we do have guidance in the comprehensive plan to provide different housing types, and that would cover that goal really covers not only the types of housing units, um, so across the entire housing spectrum, but also the housing price points and housing building types, which speaks to the question that you just asked. From a city sort of investment, our Housing and Neighborhood Services has several different programs that help residents with any housing issues that they might have. And there has been some sort of bonds that have been uh, I don't want to say approved, but have been proposed at the city council level to be able to address housing issues. What'll likely happen is that it because it's such a big conversation, it won't happen overnight, and so it's not just the city providing these options. It's also it has to be a partnership with the private development side as well. Um, I know that probably doesn't answer specifically your neighborhood, but from a policy perspective, we do have guidance in the comprehensive plan. And these plans are really intended to um, have an assessment of where the needs are from a geography standpoint, and then they're supposed to help drive investment towards those areas.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, welcome. Juan, I think you're up next. I know you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah. So I remember. I'm trying to understand like how is this meeting different than the one that occurred a couple of years ago? I remember you guys came out to the community and
Yeah.
we had to like we went to this interactive map and we had to make comments. And it was also the 2040 plan. So
Yep.
how is this different than that
Yeah.
what occurred years ago?
Sure. That's a great question. And you're right that we've been in a planning sort of process for a while. So I'll take you from the beginning and then connect the dots with how everything kind of lays out.
Sure.
So back in 2021 with the comprehensive plan, that is the overarching sort of policy guidance, as I mentioned before, from a citywide perspective. That it basically sets your vision for 20 years and says these are the goals that we want to achieve in the next 20 years.
Mhm.
Fast forward to 2022 with the policy map. Typically, comprehensive plans have a mapping component. And usually, or in most cases, in most cities throughout the country, those are done together. But because it was such a big effort and Charlotte is such a big geography land-wise,
Mhm.
the policy map came about 9 months after the comprehensive plan, but it's really the companion document. So the comp plan is your sort of text and policy, and then the 2040 policy map is the mapping component. And what that really is your land use plus guidance, right? So it says in this specific area, these are the land uses that should be occurring in the next 20 years to accommodate the growth.
Mhm.
And then with that, there's also some guidance on things like open space and mobility options for the reasons that land use is not a standalone issue. It's typically, there's a really big connection between land use and all of these other things like, your mobility options, your open space, and your building form and character.
Mhm.
Um, so that was the kind of main body of policy. The next sort of step after that was the community area planning process. And because we've been in this process for 2 years,
Mhm.
we did it in two parts. So in 2023, and this might be what you're talking about. In 2023, we really divided up the community area planning process into two parts. In 23, we did a mapping component, and that was going out into the community and asking, did we get the policy map right at the citywide level, or are there some adjustments that we need to make at the community area plan level?
Mhm.
And then the second part to that is the part that we were in last year in 2024, which was really looking at projects and programs. And that's where the assessment work came in, and sort of the bulk of the policy work that is proposed in the plans themselves.
Mhm.
And then in this year, we're really at the review and adoption process, and all of those steps between 21 and 2024, really now also have been heavily influenced by community engagement. And so we've kind of had touch points with the community all throughout the process. That's probably why this is seeming a little bit familiar, but a little bit different. It's because it's been a sort of multi-step process in
Mhm.
trying to just have complete guidance for the community in how it should develop.
Okay, so during the review process, right? So like I heard you mention something is going to go before council for a vote. So at some point this is going to be solidified, and if I'm a developer and I want to develop a piece of land and it doesn't align with the neighborhood vision for that particular plot of land,
Hmm.
would as a developer will I still be able to? And the reason I'm asking is because I sat through zoning meetings and somebody a developer wanted to build but it was designed for industrial use, and Ed Drake said, well, was like, well, they have the money and they're willing to do it, and it's been sitting there for a long time, so let's go for it. So that's a very long-winded way of asking is like, is this going to solidify it, or is it going to be like that
Hmm.
scenario that I gave you where Ed was like, they're willing to do it and it's been sitting there for 10 years empty? Does that make sense?
It does, and there's a couple of answers there's a couple of parts to your question. So the first
Sure.
question that you asked was, will this be solidified is the word that you use, but I think what you're asking is this going to be adopted? Like, will this be adopted policy by eventually by council if it gets to that point? So, and the answer is yes, this is intended to be something that's adopted. And
Okay.
so what that would do is it would provide very clear guidance, both from a staff level perspective, not just in planning, but also in other departments,
Sure.
as well as in council when they're faced with certain decisions. So from an implementation standpoint, the way that this would take shape is um, one of the main ways that council will see it is in their rezoning process.
Sure.
So if you remember, we were having the conversation about if there's a petition that comes before council, what sort of things are will council or staff look at to make a recommendation to council in making that decision. One of the things is the policy map, which is there's a revised version through this effort. The other sort of things that'll make it into the rezoning process is some of the guidance in that's in the plans in terms of, for example, there's an assessment for mobility,
Mhm.
and that lists out some projects. Staff and council would then be able to say, okay, if this is an area that's lacking either housing or lacks mobility options, what are the sort of projects that we can look at in these plans and tie it to this development and create help create the vision for this area.
Mhm.
So from a rezoning perspective, that's a different process,
Sure.
but you're right in that these plans are something that the rezoning petitions could be able to look at, much like the small area plans that existed before this,
Mhm.
and say, what is the guidance for this area from a policy perspective? They would still need to meet or be in
Alignment.
be in alignment with the UDO. Like
Mhm.
that's the regulation. So that's really the rules around how you can develop
Sure.
something. And obviously if it's coming in for a rezoning, it's the zoning map that changes, not the policy map. So
Sure.
if you think about the UDO, and you probably know this, but just for the benefit of the rest of the conversation, the rest of the participants in this conversation, if the comp plan and the policy map are policy, then the UDO and the zoning map are regulatory, and those go hand in hand as well. So you've
Sure.
got the comp plan and policy map, and then you've got the UDO and the zoning map,
Mhm.
which are your regulations. I hope that answered your question. I know it was long-winded.
Okay, so would council still have the discretion to um
Make a
you
determination.
make a determination, right? Because you're saying that you have to
Yeah.
rely on the comprehensive plan and
Hmm.
rely on the UDO, but like the scenario they gave you would, like if there's enough community support or
Yeah.
council feels that yes, we can override this, council would still do that, right?
Yes, that decision ultimately still falls with council. So
Uh,
from a recommendation standpoint,
Yeah.
staff only makes a recommendation based on adopted policy and then the regulations, right? And then
So,
it's ultimately up to council to make that decision. That does not change that process.
okay. And my last question will be, so how does the by right fit into this?
Mhm. So
Because,
this isn't changing the UDO.
okay.
So in terms of regulation, the regulations in the UDO still stand for any development, really any development coming in that needs to go through the development process.
Okay.
In terms of, I think what you might be getting at is from a like an investment perspective,
Hmm.
these plans would be able to provide some guidance on, okay, these are the areas that we should or could be looking at in terms of, meeting some of the elements that it's missing, like some of the gaps in the
No,
assessments that exist.
so that's not what I mean. So let's say I own a piece of land and it was zoned for purpose A, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which I call according to the UDO, if I own, I think it's like half an acre lot, I can
Mm-hmm.
build at least 3 units in it, right? But I own it and it was originally zoned for residential,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to build 3 units. I want to build a single house. Would the developer still have that right, or does it have to follow the UDO?
It would have to, so this does not change the UDO.
Okay,
This is the policy separate from the UDO. The UDO does not change through this process.
okay. But
Does that
would the
explain it?
developer, but could the developer build? I mean, could the developer still build what the whatever it was zoned for? And I
As
guess
long,
bypass all of this.
yeah. So if you're
Okay.
saying that they want to build to whatever the zoning district is,
Yes.
to whatever those standards, yes, that's still a by right process. That does not change with this effort.
Okay. Excellent. That was my question. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome.
Well, Gretchen,
Um,
can I ask a follow-up question
uh,
based on what you've just said? Do
sure.
place types under the policy map really mean anything? I mean, it's a broad question. They're
Uh,
all aspirational. Do they
yes,
really?
they set forth the vision of how and where development should be happening. That's
But
the
but a rezoning can instantly change the policy map, correct?
if the zoning district is not aligned with the place type, and that would then um,
Yeah, let's
require a place type change, then yes, the policy map would change based on the rezoning.
okay, so as a result, so every rezoning is ad hoc. In other words, a separate process, unique
Correct.
process.
Yes.
So if for example, Little Bean project, we had a place type, we had a policy map, it was effective, but and that changed the because the project changed the place type, the policy map then changed, and that impacted the zoning district as well at that point.
Well, if you're coming in, if the reason for the place type change is the zoning district, then yes, I mean the place type would change to
Everything changes.
everything changes, yes.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to make that clear. In other words, the process you're going through with place types is interesting, but if you're a petitioner, you can ask for anything.
That's ultimately up to council to
Right.
either approve or deny. Yes.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, we have about 8 minutes, and I want to make sure that we're getting all of the questions answered, as well as giving you some resources to walk away with. Before I forget, just know that if there is a question that does not get answered today, we are going to document all of your questions and then provide written answers to your questions or your comments. Those will be available on our website, and we've typically done it within a week or so of having the meetings. So stay tuned for that. I see, Nancy, you have a couple questions on here. Nancy, we've got a small enough group. If you want to maybe ask some of your most pressing questions to the group. you're welcome to do that.
I'm a former city council member,
Mhm.
and I'm very interested in how these decisions are made without citizen input directly about the decisions that are made in the differentiation by the staff and the council. That really does disturb me completely. The other thing is the proposal that if there's some sort of external governmental funding for an affordable section of a development, that absolutely needs to stay permanently affordable.
Mhm.
And that's something that I would push till my death day.
Mhm.
So those are the two questions really that I would like to mainly ask.
Sure.
Citizen involvement and affordability
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah, so typically, and I don't want to speak for Housing and Neighborhood Services because they are not here, but typically they do have a process where if there's some affordable component of a development, it remains affordable for the amount of time that they um, um, agree upon, and then there's an agreement that's entered into, and
It's
it
called
remains.
that's sunsetting. It should never sunset, because that he had that initial investment. And that's what I'm arguing. It's a very important concept, and it really would help solve the affordability component.
Understood.
Thank you. Thank you. And I really would love to see that turn up somewhere before a council member. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. And then to your second point in terms of resident input, so the reason for this process and for it being so long is because we've had community engagement since 20, really since the comprehensive plan was underway. So that was several years before 2021. So we've had community engagement throughout that entire process. We understand that it's a large community. It's technical information. It's complex, and so the more engagement, the better. And so we try to strive for that as much as possible.
It was an extraordinary and very good process. And I compliment those who have gone through it and those who created it. But when staff and council can override those decisions, I think that citizens need a voice in that process. So that's the point that I would like to be passed along.
Okay, we'll do. I
And
will say with the rezoning process, that is a public process where public input is sought. And
hmm,
yeah, but I will certainly pass along the comment.
thank
You
you.
know,
Yeah.
I'd like to say something. I agree with Nancy. I agree totally with Nancy. There is no effective community input at this point in time on these changes. There really isn't. If you're opposing a development, you get 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Okay.
The
And you're
developer gets
speaking
15,
specifically to the rezoning process?
specifically to the rezoning process.
Okay.
If
Is there
10 minutes, the petitioner gets 15, and the city, of course, has unlimited amount of time. So there's no effective input from the
understood?
community. Okay.
Is it in the last 4 minutes before I can give you some additional resources to walk away with, is there a
There.
recommendation or um, some thoughts that you have around, and this is open to anyone, some thoughts that you have around improving that process? And even if we don't get time to discuss it fully today, you're welcome to
Well,
send it to us.
there was some language in the original 2040 plan in the implementation section about contact having a process where the community would in fact be engaged. Uh, a hearing, a separate hearing, uh, in addition to the zoning hearing, rezoning hearing. But as far as I know, that's never happened.
Okay.
Uh, has that ever been discussed?
That has not come up in my tenure here. I've been here since right before the comprehensive plan got adopted.
You could find that language in a section of the implementation section in the original 2040 plan. But again, that was not adopted by City Council. Specifically, when they adopted the 2040 plan, they did not adopt that section. Okay. But I I suggest you go back and take a look at it.
Okay.
George, are you suggesting a meeting outside of the required community meeting prior to the rezone?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what the comprehensive plan said.
So how would that work? So if you're proposing a rezoning, you would have your community meeting where you'd notify the neighbors and you'd make a public notice that you're having a community meeting. Everybody comes and have some input. And at that point, you go to your first council reading. What would the next meeting be?
Well, I think before you have the rezoning hearing itself, the public hearing, you would have a separate hearing, a separate actual hearing where the community would be able to give input on whether or not the policy map, for example, should be changed to accommodate the rezoning.
Wouldn't that be the public hearing portion? Because every single person in the neighborhood could sign up for their 5 minutes of fame to air their grievances at the city council.
Oh, the city.
Without,
Thomas, I'm not sure exactly. Are you in the planning department? I take it you're in the planning department.
No, I'm on the dark side. I'm an evil developer. So
Oh,
I,
you're a developer. Oh, well, the process could be done if it was spelled out. In other words, and I don't want to take everybody's time on this, but it was the language was actually in the 2040 plan, and you
okay.
can take a look at it.
That's something that we'll look back at, Doyle. And as
Okay.
I mentioned before, you might benefit from just scheduling something separately, because your questions are very specific, and I think we
I
might.
just wanted to support Nancy. This is
Understood.
something that no, not only Nancy has thought of, but myself and Dennis Grills, and I'm not anti-development from any at all. It's just that the process needs to be uh, more transparent.
The rezoning process specifically.
Right, right. It shouldn't be. In other words,
Understood.
a decision regarding place types and a change in the policy map should not really be made by the staff without some community input.
And it's not, to your point, if it's something that started at the rezoning process, that's the venue for public engagement. But I understand your point. I understand.
Okay.
We're right at time, and I'd like to just provide you with a number of things. One is the um, specific plan for this area, which I didn't drop it before. I'm going to drop it in the chat. And then the last thing is a way to get in contact with us, because I think, Doyle, you probably have our emails, but for anyone who may not have it, you're welcome to um, sorry, I was dropping that for Thomas specifically. Okay, this should be the link to the specific plan, and then this is our contact information. If you click on the plan, you can comment right in the plan if you'd like to leave some additional comments. And this is the way to contact us. As I mentioned, your comments today will be logged in and responded to, and then made available to the public. So stay tuned for that. I want to see some.
I
I have
just put
some
a bunch
things.
of questions in there
Yeah,
for just so that you can answer them later. I
sure.
have many. I want to really thank you for your time. You did a really great job of
Yeah.
facilitating this meeting, and I know it's can be challenging with all of us wanting to ask you a lot of questions. So thank you for your time.
No, absolutely. It's my pleasure. And like I said, this is not the last time that, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to um, provide some one-on-one opportunities. There's also uh, office hours that we're holding Tuesdays and Thursdays from now until June. And if you log on to our website, you can find that information. Here's our website. You probably have that, but in case you do not, I will drop it in the link. And with that, thank you to everyone for spending an hour of your evening on a Thursday with us. This really means a lot to us from an engagement standpoint. So I hope that you felt heard, and even if we couldn't resolve all the issues, please know that we do take your comments to heart. So thank you for joining us. And with that, we went 3 minutes over, so I hope that's okay for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep.